Former President Trump is enjoying a wave of support after the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago, and some top Republicans who first urged Trump to wait until after the midterms to announce his run for president in 2024 are now urging him to get in sooner. CNN's Melanie Zanona joins us now. So explain the strategy here.
Well, Victor, I would say this is more of a PR and defensive strategy than anything. I mean, look, Republicans do not know what the Justice Department has on Trump or what they're looking into, but they're trying to use that black hole to their advantage. And they think that by Trump declaring a presidential bid now, they can paint Trump as a victim and try to paint the investigation and a potential indictment as nothing more than just a political witch hunt that's designed to take him down. And this is really a rapid shift in thinking among Trump's inner circle, because many of them wanted Trump to wait until after the midterms to announce any presidential bid, because they were concerned about Trump being on the ballot in November instead of it being a referendum on President Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. But over the last 48 hours, we've been told that Trump has just received a barrage of encouragement to run as soon as possible, including at a dinner last night that he had with a group of House conservative members. I talked to one of those Republicans that was at the dinner last night, Republican Jim Banks of Indiana, and here's what he told me about that meeting with Trump. He, as in Trump, told us that his mind is made up. It's just a timing of when he will make that announcement. My sense is he is fired up and ready to go, and he received a lot of encouragement in the room to get out sooner than later. Now, Victor, I'm also told that during this meeting, Trump and the group of House Republicans talked about the types of investigations into the Department of Justice that Republicans will pursue if they recapture the majority in the fall. And so this is really just another example of how Republicans are rallying to Trump's side in the wake of this FBI search, Victor.
Melanie Zanona with the reporting there on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much. Let's discuss now with CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp and CNN political commentator and former Trump campaign advisor David Urban. Welcome to you both. David, let me start with you. Do you think that the former president should get into the race before November?
No, Victor, I would urge the president not to get into the race before November. I think that the president's entrance in the race would deflect a lot from the focus where it should be, placing the focus where it should be on the record of the Biden administration, right? Joe Biden has historically, he's polling at the lowest of any president in polling, in modern polling, even in, as far back as the Eisenhower years. And, right track, wrong track in America, 85% of Americans believe the country's going on the wrong track. So with really bad numbers like that, you want to focus on this administration, not on Donald Trump.
Esty, what do you think? Think it matters?
No, I don't think there's any. I think it's sort of delusional to think that Trump is in a silo and Republican, Senate and congressional candidates are running without him or apart from him. He's very much involved in these races. He's endorsing many candidates. He's, not just dipping a toe, but an entire leg into the midterm elections. I don't think, especially Republican voters, are really separating Trump from Republican candidates. So I don't think it matters all that much when he announces or not.
David, you trying to get in there?
Yeah. Look, I obviously disagree with SE on that point, right? I think that candidates matter. That people vote for individual candidates. They don't. There are some where the president has waded in, as she said, he's dipped a whole leg and not just a toe, and has waded in with wholehearted support. But there are lots of races across this country where the president hasn't weighed in, or people are running on their own merits, and they haven't wrapped themselves in the cloak of Trumpism. And I think they deserve a chance to be heard by the voters and not diluted by the message of this raid or anything else from now till Election Day.
Listen, on this search.
Go ahead. I mean, good luck with that. I understand the desire to separate, some candidates who don't want to be tainted by Trump from Trump himself. But I mean, good luck with that. This is all happening at the same time, not in a vacuum.
We saw it last night.
Essie, my simple point is we should be, if you're a Republican, you want to run on the Biden record, not on the Trump record, right? You want to run on the lowest number in history,
David.
inflation, right? Everything.
Agree. No, I completely agree with your strategy. If I were advising Republicans, I would be saying exactly what you are. I'm just not sure it really matters all that much when when Trump gets in, I think he's already looming so large over the party. That's all.
On this search specifically, we know that Trump's base, the 30% or whatever of Republicans, they are energized by this.
Yeah.
Do you think that this brings some of those Republicans who were starting to separate after the January 6 hearings, thinking maybe someone else, this pulls them back?
I think we're making too much of what this means for voters who were always going to vote for Trump. And so, of course, they're energized. They were always energized. It's not like this, they needed this pick-me-up. They were always with Trump. And this just solidifies what they always thought about the deep state and the conspiracy theories. And then I think if you were really turned off by Jan 6, something like this will probably continue to turn you off. This is an awful week for the president and the country. I mean, he's facing several lawsuits. His tax returns are going to be overturned. His home office was searched by the FBI. This isn't good. And so I think if you were already getting a whiff of wanting to move on, thinking this guy's probably corrupt and maybe even got some, facing some criminal charges, I think this continues to push you in that direction.
But David, to that point, why are we seeing the potential 2024 opponents? Nikki Haley, former Vice President Pence, Ron DeSantis, former Secretary Pompeo, all coming out with these statements deriding the FBI, deriding the administration, when this could help them if they just stay silent here.
Right. Well, I think, SE's analysis of this, I think Republicans writ large care a great deal about overreach from the Department of Justice and from the federal government writ large, right? I think that small government, Republicans, small government Republicans find this repugnant and repulsive. In the history of the Republic, nothing like this has occurred. And so I disagree with her. I think that this has made Donald Trump a sympathetic character, which is very hard to do. But I think it's made him sympathetic amongst a great deal more Republicans than would have considered him. So your question at the beginning of that was, has this helped the president? Has people given him a relook? I think they have, Victor. I think people who may have been outside the tent may be more inclined to be, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead now that this has occurred. So it's just my take on it, but I do think it's helped him a great deal this week.
I think this is a Trump world talking point, that all across the country, people are very concerned about the overreach and losing confidence in the FBI and the Justice Department now. That is true in MAGA world, but I think most people across the country think if you didn't leave the
come
White
out of the
House,
bubble. Come out of the bubble, SE.
If you didn't leave the White House with classified documents, you don't have to worry that the FBI is coming to raid your home office. I think most people think holding even the president accountable is good. That's a good thing. That's a sign of a healthy Justice Department and a healthy FBI. I think this Trump world talking point that the FBI is corrupt and the Justice Department is coming for average Americans.
Yeah, if they did it for Trump, they could do it to you.
This is it's preposterous, and I think we're parroting it as if it's a majority opinion. It's not.
Yeah, I'm not going that far, Essie. What I'm simply saying is that a wide swath of Americans are very concerned about a historical precedent. Listen,
I don't think that's true.
This is a presidential Records Act violation. This is not criminal. This is not. Are you kidding me, Essie? Are you kidding me? Like,
no,
did Hillary? They kicked down Hillary Clinton's doors to get her server with.
Trump set the precedent.
Secret. Essie, could I finish? So you have top secret information on Hillary Clinton's computer, okay? I'm not sure if you're familiar with how a SCIF works, Essie, but you can't put top secret information on a computer.
You don't need to be condescending, David. I know what you know, trust me.
I'm not, Essie. I'm just saying it is simply a much bigger deal. Nobody raided the Clinton house in Chappaqua.
We don't have
to. So for you to say that I'm parroting, hey, Essie, just let me finish. For you to say that I'm parroting MAGA world talking points because I'm saying Republicans writ large are concerned, I think you need to get out and talk to some Republicans, Essie. That's
you
what
said
I think.
A wide swath of Americans, and I believe that
I said
Hillary's
Republicans, Essie, Republicans.
All right, now let
Hillary's
Essie finish.
emails, bad. Trump's documents, bad. Secret Service texts, bad. I want to see it all. I'm pretty fair and down the middle on this. I'm not saying one is worse than the other. You don't have to. It's all bad. But I think if you're going to apply that same level of scrutiny to Hillary, we should apply it to Donald Trump. And I don't think people, wide swaths of Americans, believe that the FBI is corrupt and coming for them because they went for a president who set the precedent for doing things that no other president had ever done before, some of which may, in fact, be criminal.
All right, we're wrapping it there. SE Cupp, David Urban, thank you.
Thanks.